Guys, when it comes to survival and prepping, having information is vital. And we do have a lot of access to the web. We can watch videos, we can read all kind of articles right there online. You can even download things, and it's a great way to be able to access those resources. One of the problems though, if we have an EMP, if we have a grid down situation where you're not able to access those files, it's great to have a good library of books. Now there's a number of different books. In fact, I've had some people to ask lately, and so that's the reason for this video. But trying to put together a good library of books that you don't have to worry about having electrical power to be able to access those books. And you can use these not only just to read, because these are very important to first get a base knowledge. Guys, man has been in a fight for survival from the beginning. And you don't want to reinvent the wheel, and that's about what it comes down to. And so having books like this you can take that has a lot of experience, and you can read through it. Now, before I get started, I will have a list of the books down below in the description, but we're going to talk about some different categories that I think are important to make sure you have a well-rounded library. So one of the first books on my list is The Modern Survival Guide, Surviving the Coming Economic Collapse by Verfal. And these are actual events that happened in Argentina in 2001 when they had a total meltdown. And guys, this is one book that completely changed my mind about prepping and survival. And so this is one, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. But having these resources, guys, you need to have them, and you need to read them if you're serious about prepping and survival. Now, when it comes to books, there's a ton of different books out on the market, and I would look for those that were being recommended, especially bestsellers, things like that. You want books that are going to give you credible information, so that is very important. Also, there are some novels, which I really like, but then there are some that are more like documentaries, and then you have just basic survival skills that are laid out in steps. And we have some categories that these fit in. But sometimes you can look at all these books and you can think, man, that's, a few $100s. The best thing to do is to pick up, a book at a time, read it, put it back, and then continue just to build your library up over time. Obviously, things have been kind of crazy in 2020, so you may want to build that library a little faster than normal. Now, we'll have a list down below again in the description of these different books. And again, one of the number one books for me is the book by Verfal. In fact, you can just put Verfal, F-E-R-F-A-L, and it'll come up with this book. This is a very popular survival manual. There are obviously things that'll be a little different, but one of the things about Argentina is it has a lot of the same culture that the U.S. has. And so this is not too far from the way things could actually turn out. Now, to me, one of the most important novels, especially the series, is the Going Home series. This is by A. American or Chris Weatherman. And there are a number of different books in this series, and I have them all. I just had these 4 put aside. But these are great. I mean, they're very interesting, very entertaining to read, and yet there's survival little nuggets all through these books. And then 2, it will give you some things that you have not really thought about in a survival situation, to me, that really makes a big difference. And so I really am a big fan of the Going Home series, and it is a national bestseller. And guys, it'll really help you to get on target. But another good series is the New World series by G. Michael Hopf. And this is actually book 1, The End. But he also does a number of books, and then this is actually one of his off the series, Nemesis Inception. This is a really great book. It takes a whole different look at it than the Going Home series, and so I really like this variation. And I believe these 2 collaborated together on one book. I've got it. I don't know exactly where it is, but any of these books with G. Michael Hopf and also with Chris Weatherman or A. American. Now, one that I just don't have right here in front of me because I've loaned it out is 1 Second After. And then there's a sequel to that, 1 Year After. And that's by William Forstchen. That is an excellent book about an EMP. And so it's a novel, but it's written to where it really makes you think about, things you possibly need for a survival situation, especially in an EMP. And another great series is 299 Days. I have loaned out some of these, but Glenn Tate does a great job on these. Again, it's just a different look at survival, and yet it's in a novel form. And also Lights Out. That's a great book. And one of the classics is James Wesley Rawls' Patriots. And that is a novel about, surviving the coming collapse. And that is a great book. It's a little bit dated. It's been around for a long time. James Wesley Rawls puts out a lot of really good books. There's a series and other books, and so I highly recommend those. Now, when it comes to putting together a group, Mags is great. This is a great book by Charlie Hogwood, and this just puts together people, how to organize a survival group or an assistance group. And this is not a militia. That's not what this is about. But it's about putting together people in hard times and how to do that and how to organize it. The Urban Emergency Survival Plan by Jim Cobb was inspired over real events that happened, which he and his family went through. And so this is a good manual to go through. And then the Prepper Survival Guide. This is just a good basic book. It's an introduction to prepping, and it's just a smart way just to kind of get started, especially if you're new to prepping. Now, one book to me that is also a very vital part of my library is the U.S. Armed Forces Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Survival Manual. Now, don't let that throw you, because it does talk a lot about how to survive these things, but it also gives you a lot of action plans and how to put things together. I mean, this is a really good book. This is not a government-issued book. This is by Dick Couch, and he put this book together just so people could understand, everyday citizens. And so this, to me, is a great resource. And one of the tried and true manuals of survival is the SAS Survival Handbook. And John Weissman this is a classic. It's been around for a long time, but honestly, it's timeless. And there's so many resources in here on about everything you can consider and think about. I do have a really small copy I keep in my bug out bag, and they have smaller versions of this. But I have a number of these because these are vital, and it gives you just a lot of the basics. Now, moving out from there, a little bit more about self-defense. We have the Light Infantry Tactics for Small Teams, Christopher Larson. This is a great manual to be able to put together a self-defense group, especially around your home, some things you need to look at, and a way to defend your property and your home and your family. And then with that is the Ultimate Sniper. This is by Major John L. Plaster. This is another classic. It has been around for a long time. Yes, it does go into ballistics and a lot of things about snipers, but it also goes into being stealthy and concealment and a lot of other things, especially with a one-man, two-man, three-man team. And so this really helps to kind of put some ideas together. This is not inexpensive. In fact, it's fairly pricey. But I was really glad to get another copy. I had a copy earlier when it first came out, and a buddy of mine hooked me up with this one. But this is well worth it. And one thing that's important, and this would go into a lot of areas, are having books on the specific firearms that you are depending on. Now, one thing that I have a lot of AR-15 manuals and different books on armory and how to build them and a lot of other things. I just didn't have those handy, but I do have one of the Shooter's Guide to the AKS, and then also handgun training. But this really folds into a lot of different categories, even up to reloading, and different books to have ready for maintaining your firearms and being able to use them correctly. And guys, I've been shooting for 40 years, and yet I can use things that come out of this, or I can help train others to be able to shoot better. And that's the big thing, guys, is to be familiar with your firearms, get a lot of training as well. But that's the one thing about all these books, is read it and get the information, and then go out and practice it or put it together in your prepping environment or what you're doing. And so that is a very important part of this. You can read all you want. Knowledge is one thing, but having the skill is really where you make a dream come true. And so make sure that you not only read these books, but also that you practice what's in these books. I mean, one thing that'll really surprise you is how many people know how to really start a fire. And that's one of the basics, or how to really filter water. If you have a fire kit, go out, test it out, check it out. You may find that certain things work better for you, especially with water filtration, knowing how to filter water, knowing where your water sources are. And so all these different books kind of come together, and it gives you a different kind of mindset. And so that is really what we're looking at. Knowledge is power. Having these books available, people can go and they can reference these books. And guys, when the electricity's out, you'll be glad to have some books that you can read, especially those that apply to what you're living through. So guys, while having physical books is old school, in a grid down situation, old school is going to be where it's at. So make sure you have some good books, not only to read, but also to hand out, and again, to use as references. And if you're serious about prepping and survival, check out Survival Dispatch Insider, one of the best resources on the web. We upload one video that's exclusive to the Insider every week. I'll have a link down below in the description. It's well worth checking out. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.